Are you stuck in the hustle mentality? So many of us who are interested in financial independence got into it because we wanted to escape the hustle. We're fed up with the societal scripts that tell us that we need to seek out more work, make more money, and climb the corporate ladder. But what we really want is a life with a lot more freedom and flexibility. But in the process of making that a reality, so many of us fall even harder into the hustle mindset. And we unconsciously accept the assumption that the ends justify the means. So, because we get so stuck in this hustle mentality, I'm going to ask all of you today to introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, where you're from, and the craziest thing that you've ever done to make or save money. How about that for an icebreaker? So today I'm excited to bring the Slow Fi interview series back. Starting in 2019, we've interviewed over 80 people about the changes that they've made to improve their lives, even if it slowed down their path to financial independence. And so today I'm excited to introduce you to Justin Peters, who's the host of the Fi Minded podcast. Over the last 5 years, Justin has transitioned from being a true hustler, seeking to reach the Fi finish line as quickly as possible, now to someone who is embracing how he can use financial freedom today. So in this conversation, we're going to discuss how to ditch the hustle mindset, the steps that he took to do that, and what he learned at different stages along his journey. So Justin, welcome to this conversation.
Jess, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this.
Awesome. So I actually want to start out as other people are introducing themselves in the chat and letting us know the craziest thing that they have ever done to make or save money. I want to ask you that question. What is the craziest thing you've ever done to make or save money?
I love Becca's there because I've argued over a lot of internet utility bills. I'll stay on a phone for an hour and a half to get a $40 fee waived. If you ask this question to my girlfriend, she'd probably have a laundry list of things that she thinks is absolutely crazy that I do to save money. Probably an easy, obvious example of that is where I set the temperature at our thermostat and how I play around with that. But I'm trying to think. I probably have a ton, but one that's like jumping out, coming to mind is when I lived in San Diego. The gas prices were just terrible. They still probably are, I'm guessing. So I'd end up walking or like just trying to like catch a ride or walk anywhere I can. And sometimes I'd walk like 3, 4, 5 miles to different places just so I didn't have to start up my car and spend any gas money.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So it's interesting because I was thinking about some of like you know how when people ask like, what's the most unhinged thing? And I was like, gosh, I can think of things that are like somewhat crazy, you know, like I've cut my husband's hair.
Yeah.
For the last, however, like ever since we got married. He, during COVID, started cutting my hair and like just watched YouTube videos. And we cut the dog's hair. So like, you know, all the hair cutting happens in our household. But then another thing. So I was thinking about what's the most unhinged thing or the craziest things that I've ever done to make money. And I'm thinking, so my very first job out of college, I worked as a street canvasser in New York City, like trying to get people to like give me their credit cards to make a monthly donation to a charity. And this was like before the age of like iPads or iPhones or Stripe or anything. I was literally taking a crayon rubbing of people's credit cards to like sign them up to like sponsor a child.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, I feel like was the absolute craziest thing I've ever done to make money. And we would do that in all weather, right? So it was like outdoors, rain, sleet, snow, like 0 degrees, 100-degree weather. And in the winter, and you know, I'm 22 and I'm like totally broke. And I would bring a thermos with me that had tea in it, and I would run out of hot tea during the day because it would be really, really cold. I would bring my own tea bags and I would like go into Dunkin' Donuts and I would just ask them if they would fill my thermos with hot water, and they would do it.
I like that. That's
absolutely ridiculous.
That's solid. That's solid. Yeah, those are things, once again, Jess, like you say that to me and I'm like, I don't know, that just feels like being frugal, being thrifty, being smart. Lots of things. Like I saw Susan post about extreme couponing. My parents are extreme couponers. I don't think I paid for toiletries and like ever really. On occasion, I have to like buy something if I run out, but they've done me pretty well. Jess talks about putting sugar in or not putting sugar in her coffee. I'll drink like 2 or 3 day old coffee because I just don't want to waste it rather than just making another pot. And then me and Jeremy Schneider from Personal Finance Club got a kick out of this too. We both would figure out like what is like the minimum amount of floss that we need to use so that we can like extend how long that we use our floss for. And it's just like absurd and obnoxious, especially like how much would be like one extra thing of floss a year cost us. But we were like, you know what, 8 inches might be the perfect. And then I got to like tape out somewhere on my bathroom table to make sure I like cut that even every single time. It's ridiculous, but here we are.
Here we are. So interestingly enough, we're going to get into the conversation in a second. I do feel like sometimes those things for me are less about being frugal though, and more about being like eco conscious too, that it's like, I don't want to waste resources. And so like at this point in my journey, sometimes when I'm doing those things, it's less that I'm like, oh, I want to save the $3 of floss. It's like, oh, if I don't have to throw an extra thing in the trash, that would be great.
I agree. I think like the zero waste movement, sustainability movements in general overlap so well with, you know, the FI community. I just interviewed 2 people. One, we talked about food waste and how much Americans waste food and how much you can save by being pretty intentional with your food. And that just gets me excited, not so I could save an extra $1,000 a year on food. That's a nice added benefit, but like all of the resources that go into producing fruits and vegetables and all these things that we end up wasting. I don't want that to go to waste and to add to the problem. And then Ashley Piper is another interview that's coming out soon. She wrote a book called No New Things and challenges people not to buy new things. And how can you go and thrift or buy secondhand or borrow something from somebody? I don't know. I'm actually, as I've gotten further and further into financial independence, the sustainability aspect is also becoming an important element for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a couple other folks, I see Suzanne wheeled a fridge 3 blocks away to put it into storage.
That's crazy.
And Christine uses half a dryer sheet for each one. So all of you folks here, if you are have done some crazy things to make or save money, you are in good company. So before we jump into the conversation, I want to do a quick pulse check here. So of all the folks who are here today, we are talking about ditching the hustle mindset. And so I want to get a pulse check for those of you who are here. Who here feels like it's hard to break free from the hustle mindset? And if you feel like that's true for you put a 1 in the comments. And if you don't really feel like it's true, you can put a 2. I am certainly putting a 1 for myself. I think can be really challenging to break free from that hustle mentality. And, you know, I still fall back into that pretty often. So diving in here, Justin, you and I recently had an awesome conversation on your podcast where we talked about the 5 stages of financial freedom and the freedom and options that each of those stages can provide. So we talked about debt freedom, FU money, Coast Fi, and how those things can unlock new options to help you build the life you want long before Fi. And at the end of the podcast, you said something that I actually want to share and use that as the launching point for our conversation. So you said, the idea of gaining freedom along the way to Fi feels so obvious, but honestly, I've had a hard time embracing it. I think that's the type A achiever in me. If I haven't hit the final goal, part of me feels like I don't deserve to celebrate. But Jess got me thinking differently. I've already hit some big milestones, like paying off debt, saving my first 100,000 and reaching Coast By, and it's time to start actually enjoying the freedom those milestones have created. So since recording, I've backed off a little bit. Even though that means making a little bit less money and spending more on things that matter, like traveling with my girlfriend, it feels good and I want to keep leaning into it. So please hold me accountable. So here we are, Justin, holding you accountable for what you said you wanted to on your podcast. Well, that is a bit of a joke because I also feel like in this statement, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit for the ways that you have had already taken steps to design your life before that conversation. And even if that conversation inspired you to take additional steps. And so I don't want you to sell yourself short. And so we're going to talk about that whole journey throughout that conversation. So the conversation today. So, you know, all of the steps that you've taken before, right, in the last 5 years to let go of that hustle mentality. And then we're also going to talk about some of the changes that you've made recently as well. Sweet. So before we get into chatting about the specific changes, I wanted to start with the fact that you were once a hardcore hustler. You started working full time, I gather from things I've learned about you, at the age of 15. And you started to pursue FI straight out of college and were super frugal. So I would love to hear from you sort of answers to a couple questions. So first, what did that look like for you? What did the hustle mindset look like for you sort of generally and at its most extreme? And where do you think that came from? Like what inspired that for you? And before you answer, I want to ask other folks, as Justin's talking about this, I also want to encourage you to jump in the chat and share with us where your hustle mindset came from. So what originally inspired that in you? So what did it look like?
Can I go ahead and answer? I'm a Midwest boy, and waking up, working a lot, all of that is kind of embedded in Midwest culture, I think, pretty naturally, but definitely in the household that I grew up in. I probably didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely looking for validation from my parents by getting a job early. And yeah, I started working actually at McDonald's at 15, but even at 14, I was refereeing soccer and I absolutely hated it. I was like getting yelled at by parents all of the time, like trying to sort this out. Honestly, sure, to make a little bit of money, but honestly to impress my parents too, because they always really valued the hustle mentality, the working aspect of it. They would look down on things like unemployment on occasion, which like was disappointing, and really valued people that worked a lot and were quote unquote contributing to society. So I think that just kind of got ingrained in me just right from the get-go. And then I got into this routine or rhythm of working a lot. Like even finishing high school and going into college, I was pretty much always maintaining a job, and it'd be like Saturdays, Sundays, I would work 8-hour days. Fall breaks, summer breaks, spring breaks, I would end up working full time. Summers, like I would, immediately right after the school year ended, the next Monday, I would be working 40 hours that week. I never gave myself like a week off or took a spring break or did anything like that. I felt like if I had free time, a weekend or a week off, then I should be working. So that's probably where the inspiration came from. You also mentioned like at its peak, what did that look like? And a memory that I remember, so I moved to Austin, Texas, and I took a step back in terms of how much I was earning. I took a sabbatical, then I re-entered the workforce and I went to go work for the startup company, and they couldn't pay as much as I was previously getting paid. So what did I do? I picked up a side job, and on the weekends I would be catering at weddings. And oftentimes that was both Saturdays and Sundays. And there were long days, like usually 10 to 12 hour days. You'd have to drive out of the city to get there. So I would work full time. The startup company told me that if I worked overtime, I could work as much overtime as I wanted and I get paid for that overtime. So I was like working 45, 50 hours a week at that job, and then turning around and spending my Saturdays and Sundays, usually between 10 and 12 hours each of those days, going and working for a catering company and being super frugal too. It's not like I was like online shopping or balling out and taking awesome vacations with all this money that was coming in. Like I was taking that money and saving and investing. So that was probably the peak or the height. It's definitely come down since then.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to hear like how that impacted you over time, because it's challenging, and I think humans aren't built to work that much. So yeah, tell me what happened.
Yeah, I think I've definitely had multiple periods of burnout. But the thing that I think it impacted me the most was as I was trying to slow down, downshift in life, like it felt unnatural. Like it felt like I shouldn't be doing this. And that's still really hard for me. Like a recent example is my brother has a side hustle where he sells on Facebook Marketplace, and he left for the weekend and needed somebody to like do some handoffs and do some builds for him and whatnot. And I just immediately was like, oh, I'll make some extra money and I'll do that for you. And then he pushed back on me actually. He's like, Justin, you don't need to be like working extra on a weekend. Like you've been telling me that you've been trying to work less. And I'm like, actually, you're right. That's actually something that I shouldn't do. Like, let's go find a neighbor kid to help you out during that time. He's like, definitely.
That's awesome. Well, and that's helpful to have somebody who can call you out on that.
For sure.
Right. And I think that's part of the power of having community of people who know what your goals are, is that they can say, you said really like you want to be working less. Do you really need to be doing that right now? So that's fantastic that he did that for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that level of hustle can lead to burnout. I definitely have had my own experiences with burnout that came from always working 50-hour plus weeks and trying to always take on more work and impress people and climb the corporate ladder and get to the next level and get the next promotion, right? That sort of level of hustle, and then stepping back from it and wondering like, why am I doing this? And it's often because of some sort of invisible script that came from our families, right? Or came from school. Or I see Catherine in the chat is saying her hustle mentality came from engineering school. Or I think Laura in the chat, who's Doggy You, saying like that came from just this like lifetime of anxiety, right? That there's this feeling that we always need to be hustling, and it's this like productivity prison in some ways that we have created for ourselves, because it's this societal expectation that we always are striving and going after the next thing. So you obviously aren't doing that. We all struggle with this productivity issue still, right? But you have made significant changes in the last 5 years. And I think what everybody wants to know, and what I want to know and learn from you, is how did you actually break free and unlearn this hustle mentality? And I know it didn't happen overnight, right? It's something that happened gradually over time. So would love for you to talk us through that. And maybe we can start with the mini retirement that you took in 2020.
Yeah, the mini retirement was pretty much the impetus or the start of a lot of what's to come. And I'm still working through this whole productivity prison that you mentioned there, and it's a slow shift away from the hustle mentality, because even after my mini retirement, I found myself getting caught back up in these steps. But yeah, it was July 2019, and I'd been working for an employer for 7-8 years at that point in time. And I was definitely feeling burnt out, but also just had a little bit of career boredom, and thought the change that I needed, that I needed a change, that I needed to go to a different employer in the same industry. So I ended up making a quick change from one employer to the other. And week 3, I was like, this is not it. But I tried to push through it and keep going. I figured it would get better, until one night I was having a conversation with a friend, probably about 3 months into my job. And I told them, I'm kind of waiting out this job right now, so I can hit the 1 year mark, so I don't have this like career blemish on my resume. And he said something to me that really made me pause. And he's like, you're really going to waste the next 9 months by some societal expectation that may or may not even be true. I was like, whoa, yes. That's fair. And he knew a little bit about my financial situation. We've been talking about that. I had moved from St. Louis to San Diego, and I'd saved up a bunch of money. I thought I was going to lose my job. I didn't lose my job. I thought the move was going to cost a certain amount of money. It didn't cost that amount of money. So I had this like nest egg of money that had been sitting around for about a year at that point in time. And he suggested something that I had never thought about before. And he said, why don't you just take some time off? Like, if you don't know what you want to do, just like take some time off and it will come to you. And once again, as a hardworking Midwest boy, like taking a career break, let alone taking a career break in your mid-20s, was something I had never thought of. And that sat for me. Like, I didn't immediately act on it, but it was probably about 6 weeks later that I was like, you know what? I think that's the right move. And I started planning a sabbatical. I was calling it a sabbatical at that time. I like calling it mini retirement now because that sounds way more fun. And Jillian Johnsrud gives good clarity or definition to that. So I really liked, so I really thought about that. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do that. And I planned out 6 months, made sure I had the money set aside for it. And I quit my job, and I started taking some time off. And I really planned it in 2 parts. The first 3 months was going to be spending time on a project that I always wanted to do, but never had time to do it because of work. And then the second half of the sabbatical was going to be career exploration. I was going to do some job shadowing. I was going to start informational interviews. I was going to do some exploring so I could kind of figure out what the next stage of my career was going to be. So that kind of teed up my mini retirement. And honestly, it was the best thing ever. Not because of the project that I ended up working on, which was transformational. It was actually my podcast that I ended up launching, which has turned into a career for me. And then the second half, sure, I found a new career and I kind of got back into things. But the biggest thing that career break did for me was gave me a taste of what post-financial independence could really look like. And then that's when I was like, you know what? There's something greater. I started to like unpack a little bit and started to realize like what would life look like that wasn't centered around work. And like, I got the bug. And then from even whenever I re-enter the workforce, I was like, how can I start designing that lifestyle?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think when people are really struggling with this hustle mentality, that's one thing that I recommend that people do is just figure out how to take a little bit of time off of work and step away from it and just see how it feels. And I know for me, I ended up taking about a 6-month sabbatical, mini retirement, career break, whatever it is that you want to call it. I called it a career break at the time because it wasn't voluntary.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I really burned out and had really severe anxiety and panic attacks that made it so I couldn't work. And that really, like, there was a before moment and an after moment for that, right, in my life of what work meant and what the purpose of work was and what it was for in my life. And up to that point, full on hustling, and then taking a step away from work and being like, why? Like, why did I do that? Like, why did I take it to that extreme to get to this point of burnout when the reality was I absolutely didn't need to do that. I'm curious if you had any, like, have had any moments kind of like that throughout your mini retirement where you had like light bulb moments where you were like, huh, this is, like, tell me about that.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the first few weeks, month or two, honestly, was really hard because even though I started a podcast and I'd have like 2 hours of work to do every day, many a times I would like go for my run, read, journal, do my podcast projects, and then it'd be like 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I'd be like, what do I need to do now? Like I was just like kind of used to being on until 5:30, 6, 7 p.m. And I would have like this whole afternoon open. And that felt really uncomfortable for a while, like not, thinking through like, what do I need to be doing? But eventually I started to let go of that. And it would be board games with the family or afternoon walks with friends or lunch with my girlfriend. And that's when I started to realize like, ooh, these are some other elements of just day-to-day living, not like the big grand things like going out and doing a huge European trip or, I don't know, the grand bucket list items, but like the everyday normal original things that you do that I was like, you know what? I want to be able to read for 30 minutes a day on my back porch. I want to be able to like make a new recipe because I'm not burnt out or tired. Like those were things that I started to realize that I wanted to incorporate into my everyday life. And that's when I was like, I want to make sure even as I re-enter the workforce that these things stay with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I almost think of it as like starting to envision what does your ideal day look and feel like? And I think stepping away from work, whether it's for a period of time, whether it's working part-time a little bit, whether it's taking a long vacation, right? Like stepping away to say, what do I want my life to look like, and incorporating some of those things. And then saying, how do I incorporate work back into it now that I have this commitment to all of these other important pieces of my life, and work is not the primary. Like, I don't want work to be the primary focus all the time.
Yeah. And I like that you did call out like incorporating work back, because honestly, I knew I was done with my mini retirement because I was like sufficiently bored. Like by month 5, I was like, you know what? I'm like kind of ready to do some work now. Like I feel refreshed. I'm excited. And I wanted to make sure like that came in the right capacity, because I was telling you about that moment when I was in Austin working a full-time job and working catering on the weekends. That came after my mini retirement. So I kind of like found this bliss and then accidentally stumbled back into burnout. And I got to see, it was nice over a 2-year period. I kind of got to see both sides of the pendulum. And over the last 3 years, I've been trying to find the healthy middle, because I do like work on occasion, especially meaningful work that excites me, work that's fun and creative. Like those things are really important to me. And that's whenever I get to bring in the optionality that financial independence gives me and really start to design work the way that feels right for me on an everyday standpoint.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you make the point that like, sometimes we go through these moments where the pendulum swings in life. Like you went from a space where you were doing very minimal work and fell back in, right, over time to really back into that hustle mentality. But then the pendulum came back, right? It came back to the middle, to something that you want. It's like a place where that feels more sustainable for you long term. And so I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about, okay, so you were working at a startup, you got back into, right, you were doing catering on the weekends, you were back to this place of saying, I'm really hustling again. I know since then you've done quite a bit to redesign your work life so that that pendulum is back in the middle. One, how did you realize the pendulum had swung too far in one direction? And then what did you do to sort of bring it back and equalize it?
The moment that I knew I realized it went too far was when a friend didn't invite me to something. And I asked them about it. And they said, dude, you're never available. Like, you're always working. And I was like, ooh, that hurt. That coincided with a really great opportunity too. So I was working at this startup company and doing the catering. I loved the startup company. It was really fun, exciting, fast moving, a lot of like the elements that I like in terms of like the place that I work. But I was working for by far my worst manager. And this was like the nice, interesting, reflective moment for me, kind of looking at my 20s and realizing like, what does good work look like for me? Whenever I left and I started my career sabbatical, it was kind of like around boredom and the task and the responsibility. But then going through that moment when I was working for this really bad manager, I realized the person I directly report to that I work for is almost just as important as what I do or the company that I work for. And I was going through this period where I was really struggling with this manager. They were creating an environment that I wasn't wanting to be a part of. And my old boss called me and she had taken a different opportunity and she had a number two that she needed to hire. And she asked if I'd be open or interested in taking that role. And I was definitely interested. I immediately told her yes. And with that, I set some parameters. And at that point in time, I was podcasting. I was starting my podcast business. And I told her, these are things that are really important to me. Can you work around the fact that I might do midday interviews or networking calls? And she said, sure, of course. Like, as long as you just maintain your calendar and then get the projects done that you need to get done, I don't care when you work. So that was like the first moment of like, okay, a little bit of flexibility and design of my work. And I made like 3 times as much I was making at that startup. So I got to drop the catering job. And I was like, cool, I'm hitting income limits now. I get to have my weekends back. I'm working for somebody that really excites me and I'm not coming into or out of work like really burnt out. And I'm like fitting in these things that are really exciting for me, which is this podcast business that I'm starting. So I started working on that. And then just over the last couple of years, deciding to prioritize the business more and deprioritize the work that I'm doing for her more. And she's been really receptive to allowing me to back off hours, to box in meeting blocks, a lot of things that are like making it super sustainable for me to continue to work there. And it's crazy. It's funny how it works, but like whenever you start designing work around your life, you kind of enjoy work. Like, I'm like, cool. Like I don't have any immediate plans to drop any of like my income producing activities that I'm doing because they're really fitting into the lifestyle that I'm doing right now, which is funny. I'm not financially independent. I'm about 70% of the way to my FI goal right now, but I feel financially independent because of that, because I have this income that's paying on my day-to-day living expenses. I know I already have a nest egg built up that's eventually got to grow into my FI number. I don't know. I'm loving life and things are working out really well. So it kind of happens slowly over time, and I'm continuing to push the needle on that, like dropping clients that don't fit my style or trying to continue to box in my meetings into smaller and smaller windows. And that is just creating a better, healthier relationship with the work that I'm doing and making me enjoy it more.
That's awesome. I would love, so I imagine that some of the folks here who are listening to this are thinking and wondering like creative ways to structure their work or set boundaries to have work fit around their life better. So I'm wondering if you could actually like describe for us, like, what does a week look like? What are some of the boundaries that you're setting? How many hours are you working? Like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Meetings was the big thing for me. I had meetings thrown around on my calendar all the time. I was terrible about saying, yep, my calendar's up to date, just schedule whatever works for you. And that created these like random blocks where I'd have a meeting for 30 minutes, then a half-hour break, and then another meeting for an hour, and then an hour break. I was never like in the mode of deep work or processing or being able to like chunk my days or weeks into certain blocks. So immediately I tried to start doing that, and it's worked really well. So one practice that I put in is no meetings before 10 a.m. That's been super helpful. I get to do my one important project in the morning. I get to prep for my day. I get to make sure I have a workout in before I actually start work. All of these things to really set up a great day for me. So my meetings, I typically have an open calendar from 10 to 3 p.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then a little bit smaller window on Fridays. I try to go meetingless Mondays and not have any meetings unless it's super critical that I need to be at something that can't get moved. So that alone has really helped. And then I put a few other kind of rules in place. One rule that has worked out really well for me, especially in the spring and the fall, is if it's a nice day, the sun is shining, it's 75 degrees out, I'm done with work by 3. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go play. I can always come back whenever it gets dark and finish up work. But just the fact that I have the flexibility, I'm done with my meetings. There might be something that's hanging there, but it's looking nice. I want to go play pickup sports. I want to go run. I want to go rock climb. I want to go for a walk with my girlfriend. I don't know. I just want to get outside and enjoy that moment because we have really hot summers. And here in Austin, sometimes it's raining. I'm going to make sure I take advantage of every day where there's some perfect weather.
I love that. Well, and it seems like, right, you have this intention, right, that you've set that says, if it's a nice day, I'm going to be done with work by 3 because I'm going to be doing something outside. But you also put the system in place to make that possible, which I love meetingless Mondays, right? Like I always hear meatless Mondays but meetingless Mondays,
Yes.
which is awesome. And meaningless mornings before 10 a.m. And meaningless afternoons after 3 p.m., right? So that gives you that space and that flexibility to be able to say, anytime it's nice, my meetings are done at 3. All I need to do is get my work done. That's exactly what I'm gonna do.
Because inspiration comes to me at different times when I need to work on projects, like sometimes it's like a Saturday mid-morning and I'm like kind of excited to like jump into like a business project that I've been like itching to start, and I'll go ahead and do it. And I'm not gonna judge myself for that, saying that I should be doing something else at that time. If I'm really excited to work on something and I have an open morning or afternoon on a Saturday, I'll go ahead and do that. Same with some of the work projects that I have to complete, throughout for my employer too. Like there will be moments when I'm like, it's 6:30, my girlfriend's gone, she's traveling. I don't feel like watching a TV show. It's raining outside. Nobody wants to hang out. I'm kind of excited to like just get a project done so I don't have to think about it the rest of the week. So it's nice because boxing in those meetings or those kind of time committed things into certain times allows me to have complete flexibility and autonomy with how I do the other things that aren't bound to specific times.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so besides going outside at 3 p.m. on every nice day you possibly can, what does this enable in your life?
What do you mean by that?
Like what other things outside of work are you able to invest in because you've reduced the commitment and time and energy that's like, or even just the amount of time that it takes up on your calendar?
Sure. One thing that I absolutely love doing is gardening, piddling around in my garden, plants. So I get to spend way more time on plant projects, which is great. And then I also love podcasting. Like I absolutely love it. I don't feel like it's a job for me. And I get to invest in a ton of time into that, both creating content, helping my clients create content, and then giving back and creating community in the podcasting world. So those are all things that fill my cup. But the other things that I really enjoy too is traveling with my girlfriend. She loves to travel, and something that has really been dragging on me, and I'm actually trying to continue to build my schedule and my lifestyle more and more, that I can just be a little bit more spontaneous with saying yes to travel opportunities. She's a concert photographer. She does a lot of international travel. There'll be moments when she's like, I got a gig like 2 weeks from now in Portugal. Do you want to come meet me afterwards? And I got to like flip open the calendar and be like, I don't know. Like I want to get to a place that I'm saying yes more often than I'm saying no to those certain situations. And slowly over time, I'm designing some of that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, right. So, and that's one of those situations where it's the intention is there, right? You want to say yes more often than you say no.
Yes.
But then it's putting the system in place to be able to have the flexibility to be spontaneous and to
Yes.
make that choice. And do you feel like your work is getting to that place where you will be able to say yes more often, or like what would it take?
For sure. I think it's already there.
Okay.
As I'm kind of continuing to back off just my hours from a W 2 employment standpoint, that's becoming less and less. And I've been telling my manager I want to do less collaboration projects and more just independent work, which allows me to continue to have more and more flexibility with how that work gets done and where I can do that work. She's already very, she approves a lot of just remote work. Like, take your laptop with you. I don't care if you're like working over in Europe or you're at your normal desk here. So that's great. My business is also 100% remote. We do post production for podcasting, so I'm fairly portable on that front. And I feel like I'm continuing to try to figure out ways to make that even more enjoyable. I mentioned like putting boundaries with clients or firing clients that don't make sense, but also like getting rid of tasks off my plate that can easily be outsourced, delegated, automated, or just completely eliminated. Because I don't have to like have the same kind of margins on the business than I did early on in my career. Like, it's at the end of the day, if I make $1,000 less this month, but I work 100 less hours, like that is a trade-off that I'm 100% open to having.
So there's a couple of things that you mentioned there that I want to call out. So one is, and I think this is something that could apply to people across various industries, is this idea that if you can negotiate and choose and figure out how to do more independent, individual contributor work, the likelihood is that you'll have a lot more flexibility in your job, in your career. And there are trade-offs to that. Sometimes work is more fun when we collaborate, depending on your personality.
Yep.
But at the same time, like for me, I know that I can collaborate in other ways. I don't need to get my collaboration at work, right? I can get my collaboration in masterminds or working with other creators or having conversations like this. Like I don't have to get that from work. So that's one, I think, important piece to mention.
And I definitely sacrifice certain things with that decision too. Like even visibility with upper management. Like I'm not on the fast track to get promoted anymore. And that was something early on in my career that was super important to me. And working on collaborative projects is a great way to do that. But I'm recognizing where I kind of want to go with my career in that front. And I'm okay with some of that sacrifice, knowing that I'm probably got to continue to narrow the hours down in terms of the work that I'm doing. But yeah, no, it's great. And I like it for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely a trade-off. So let's talk about the accountability. So you said that you have started to make some shifts even in the last couple of months as you're starting to embrace more and more of this Coast-Fi mentality. So tell us, and I know some of that is the traveling, but tell us a little bit more about some of the changes that you're making and that you want to make to continue letting go of this hustle mentality.
Well, I just dropped another 10 hours on my W-2 this week, actually, starting Monday. I'm working 10 less hours, which is great. Continuing to kind of narrow in that. And I'm hoping to take those hours and delegate them to things that aren't work related. It would be very easy for me to turn those hours back and put them into my business. And an hour or two of that probably is going that direction because there's things that really excite me over there that I want to do and continue to invest in. But a lot of that time I'm got to be spending outside or working on different hobbies or having lunch with friends or working on craft projects with my girlfriend or doing some more travel or taking a day off when my in-laws come and visit. Like that was something that drove me crazy. I'd be up here working, doing meetings while my in-laws were here, having fun downstairs. My girlfriend has like a on or off job. Like she's either touring with an artist, traveling with them, or she's at home having to do absolutely nothing. So they would come in town when she's off, and they would do a bunch of fun things and run around and check out museums at 11:30 or work on a craft project around the house. And that drove me crazy. And now I've been wanting to take a day off whenever I just know I can afford to take a day off, which is really great.
That's awesome. And what, like, bringing it back to this, like, unlearning and letting go of this hustle mentality, like, what do you feel like has shifted in your brain over time that's allowed you to give yourself permission to do these things?
Oh man, I really wish I had a good answer for this because I really want to continue to expedite this thinking a little bit more. Part of it is honestly just like hearing people like yourself or Carl Jensen. I interviewed him at the beginning of this year, and he kind of mentioned too of like, I kind of wish I didn't run so fast during the period of accumulation. So a lot of my 5 friends I've continued to absorb and learn from, especially the ones that are 5, 10, 15 years a little bit ahead of me in terms of their journey. And what are they saying? What do they regret? What are they prioritizing now? I was talking to a friend recently when he was in town, and I was like, man, I'm kind of thinking about starting this new business. Like, are you excited about anything recently? He's like, nah, not really. Like, I kind of just want to like continue to narrow in what I'm doing so I can spend more time with my family. And like, that took me aback. Only like someone in the FI community would really do that. And I have this like interesting duality between like the FI community that I have and the business entrepreneur community that I also have. And many of times they're somewhat conflicting in terms of how you should expend your energy. And that's really interesting because I like different aspects of both. But I'm continuing to learn from the people that are in front of me and try to implement that into my own journey. But I think it's a slow process in all honesty. Like there are moments when like last week I was on vacation and I was like, man, I should really get those emails cleaned up. And I just like I thought about it multiple times and I had to just not open the laptop. I'm like, I'm on vacation. Like I told myself like, I'm not replying to emails this week. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. I'm hearing a couple of important things. Like one is just practice. That like, so like there's some things that we just need to remind ourselves of over and over and over again. And this was something that the lifestyle design mastermind group that I run was talking through on Monday, that like sometimes we have this negative view of ourselves that like, I shouldn't have to relearn this thing. But in reality, like, we need to practice, right? Like creating a new neural connection is not very different than building like your biceps by doing bicep curls. Like you can't just do it once and expect to be like, really buff. Like you have to think through, you have to do it over and over and over and over again. And then it creates that new neural connection in your brain that's like, oh, maybe I don't need to hustle. And then, go ahead.
Something that helped me initially kind of get to that place too was just having something that I was more excited to do than work. And that could be a throwaway question or a throwaway statement initially, but it honestly really worked for me. Like seeing my girlfriend go out and do some travel without me, like because there was like a moment when I was like, I can't make that trip, and many of times like she wouldn't do something because I couldn't be there, and eventually she just stopped caring if I went or not and just went and did a trip with her girlfriends or a solo trip. And like it took only a few times like that when I was like, you know what, I kind of want to be there. Like I kind of want to do that. And then there's other things like hobbies that like I'm really excited to spend more time and invest more time into. So like putting things in front that I'm like, I don't care if I need to do some more work. If it's 4:30 and there's a pickup soccer game that's happening in the park at 5, I really want to make it there. And just like having some other things that were really exciting. So I didn't just rely on working or not working really helped me get into that mode of realizing the world still spins whenever you're not working. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because one, I'll say that's not a throwaway comment at all, because I feel like that's key. Like knowing what you want to be doing instead is like the thing that's going to help you move away from it rather than just being like, I don't need to hustle all the time. But if you don't know what you want to actually use your time on, you're going to keep hustling.
Exactly.
Right. And that's kind of the micro scale of it. But even the macro scale of it, like people who are like reach financial independence or have a lot of financial freedom and are like, oh, I want to be moving. I want to do something different. Right. Unless they know what they want to do different and how they want to spend their time, they're probably not going to make the change, right? It's this knowledge of saying, this is the thing that I want more, that I'm willing to make this trade-off to get. So I feel like that's actually a really, really key piece of letting go of the hustle mindset.
I have a colleague that's been retiring now for 7 years. Like I went to her retirement party during my first stint at this company, left the company, came back. I was like, you're still here? I thought you retired. And she has still been there since. And part of me feels like just because she doesn't really have anything else that she wants to do outside of work. So sure, she might be working a little bit less, but I think she just got to continue to work, not because she needs the money. It's just because that's her outlet for what she wants to do right now or how she's spending her time right now.
Yeah. Right. And then I think, so you made one more point that I want to hone in on, which is this like surrounding yourself with people who aren't ascribing to the default narrative. Right? Or this default script of you have to be hustling all the time and you have to, like, and that needs to be the focus. Right. And so it sounds like you've surrounded yourself and, right. We can't surround ourselves with 100% of people who are like that when the vast majority of people in the world are still focused on achievement and in that hustle mindset. But like finding a couple people at least who are living their lives a little bit differently, I know helps me to say, oh, like there is another way. It doesn't have to be this one way. And then seeing them and their lives and, being able to talk through things with them or have them call me out on things like, hey, didn't you say you want to be working less? Like that's so incredibly helpful.
For sure. Yeah, and that's been a huge help as well. And sometimes the community builds slow, but as you continue to do some unconventional things, even at unconventional hours, like you go to the grocery store at 10 a.m. and start talking to some people, like you're going to find some people that aren't typically working the 9 to 5 hours. You hit the gym at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and start chatting up with people. Like these people they're living a lifestyle outside of at least the norm in terms of the full-time work and the 9 to 5 hours. And you slowly kind of build or find people that are ascribing to a different kind of lifestyle, and that will come over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So Justin, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about unlearning the hustle mentality. I'm taking a few key things away from this conversation. One of them being, this is a muscle that we need to build over time. And it's something where we may swing to one side of the pendulum and then we may swing all the way back to the other side of the pendulum and then feel really disappointed in ourselves. And then give yourself some grace if you're in that position and figure out how to equalize the pendulum and bring it back to the middle, and get closer to the sustainable life that you want to be living. Another takeaway that I have from this conversation is that we need to focus on what do we want instead, right? Like what do we actually want to spend our time doing so that the trade-off of making less money feels worth it, Like, what would I rather do instead of have more money? Right? What are those things? I know what a lot of those things are for me. And then the third thing I'm taking away is surround yourself with people who are choosing to ditch this hustle mentality, and who can encourage you and inspire you by the way that they're living, and sometimes even call you out and hold you accountable for the things that you say that you want. So, and I see, Rebecca, what are we running towards rather than run away from? Yes, absolutely. And build a community while we're doing that. So Justin, thank you so much for sharing your insights in this live Slow-Fi interview today. I know I learned a lot from this conversation. For those of you who are here, I would love if you have an insight from the conversation, feel free to post it in the comments to let us know what you're taking away from this conversation. And Justin, if anyone would like to continue following your journey, where can they find you?
Fi Minded, that's Fi Minded on your favorite podcast player. I'm on all of them that's out there. And I'll drop, I got the link queued up here. I'll drop the link to, looks like I can't post it. I'll drop, you can check out episode 171. That's my episode with Jess. We had an awesome conversation about the 5 stages of Fi. That was one that got a whole lot of praise for thought-provoking it was. So I think that's a really good place if you want to check out the show.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can hear Justin actually asking to be held accountable.
I know. I shouldn't have put that in there. You can come back to me anytime with that one now.
I know. Awesome. And thank you so much for everybody who's joined us today. I see a few folks are sharing insights of things that they are taking away from this conversation. So Christine talking about flexible work, Laura, is thinking about decreasing her work and increasing activities and fun. So This sounds like a perfect moment to have this conversation. And for those of you who are here or who are watching the replay, if you enjoyed this conversation, I would encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so that you'll see content like this in the future. And as always, I like to close by reminding you to enjoy your journey to financial independence. And we will see you on the next one.